What do financial advisors actually do when they meet genuinely wealthy clients? Well, I'm a chartered financial planner and a fellow of the Personal Finance Society, and for the last 10 years, I've worked with families to help them reduce inheritance tax, saving them tens of millions of pounds. Now in this video, you're going to see the sort of strategies when we work directly with those families using a real client case study. So I've been asked to go and see some new clients. Their previous advisor has retired and I'm taking over the relationship, but I've never met them before. So this is the first time. And we've had a short phone conversation and I know that they want to talk about inheritance tax planning, but that's really all I know. These are genuinely wealthy clients. So they've got about 1 million invested and most of that's in ISAs, but the total estate is worth approximately 3 million. And I've had a quick research and I think that puts them in roughly the top 1 to 2% of households in the UK in terms of total wealth. There is a bit of pressure here, so I'm going in as the new advisor. If they don't like my ideas, then they could go elsewhere. They could ask the firm I work for to send a different advisor out to see them. So for me, the stakes are genuinely quite high. So just about to go in and we'll see how we get on. Okay, so that was a really good meeting. Now, they're a lovely couple, both age 71, and they want to do something, and they're very sensible clients, but like a lot of people at this stage of life, they're just nervous about giving up access to large portions of their assets. Now, they're holding a lot of cash. So I'm aware this is a lot for anybody, but they're holding over £1 million in cash, which from a technical point of view, that is too much. But that cash gives them security. And they've told me very clearly that they don't want to give it away. They don't want to put that cash into trust. And what it's really there for is to enable them to downsize if they want to very quickly without needing to sell their current property. So emotionally, it gives them a lot of security. Now, that does constrain what I'd ideally like to do for them. But that's just the reality of putting together any financial plan. So let's go back to the office and see what we can come up with. Now let's call them Mr. and Mrs. Brown, not their real names. So here's their position. So the main residence is worth approximately £1 million. They've got cash, also around £1 million, and investments, mainly in ISAs, also valued around £1 million. Now they've been drawing the natural income from their ISAs, so that's been giving them around £28,000 a year, helping them fund their lifestyle. Their main income sources come from secure, defined benefit pensions, and also their state pensions. Now in total, that's about £70,000 per year, giving them about £5,000 a month net after tax, and their household spending is about £6,000 a month. And that shortfall is topped up by the ISA income. Their cash is also earning a decent return, about 4% on average, producing roughly £40,000 per year in interest. Now they're not spending that interest, but they are paying tax on it. So let's look at the inheritance tax position right now. Their estate is worth about £3 million. They've both used up their residence nil rate bands because their estate is well over £2 million on the second death. And so they will be left with just their standard nil rate bands, which is £650,000 in total. Now, if they both passed away today, their taxable estate would be £2.35 million. And that would produce an inheritance tax bill of £940,000. And that's the problem that we're going to try and solve today. So some strategies are fairly easy to rule out. So we could use business property relief, and that's for assets that become inheritance tax free after 2 years if you invest into them. But these are generally high risk investments. They've also got higher charges. These clients are healthy. They're likely to live well beyond 7 years. And they also have a balanced attitude to risk. And business property relief just doesn't fit very well as far as I'm concerned. We discussed making large outright gifts to their children, but the clients explained to me that they've already helped their children financially and they just don't want to make further large gifts. My textbook solution would be to use their cash in order to fund a discretionary gift trust, using their nil rate bands to do so. But the clients were very clear, they don't want to give up access to this cash lump sum. And to be honest, this is where I have to step back as an advisor. A financial plan isn't all about squeezing every last pound of tax efficiency out of somebody's situation. That £1 million cash buffer, it gives them flexibility, it gives them comfort and control, and the ability to downsize their house very quickly if they need to. And that has a value to them, and it's just something that I feel I need to be respectful of. So I've now realised something important. These clients were already perfectly happy living off the income from their ISAs. Now, they weren't spending down the capital, just the income. So instead of trying to move their cash, how about I focus on the ISAs? Now, my idea is to move £1 million from their ISAs into a discounted gift trust, also known as a DGT. Now, with a DGT, you make a gift into trust. I'm going to use an absolute trust here for the benefit of their children, but you carve out an income stream for life at outset. So they could invest, let's say £1 million, and take, for example, 3% or £30,000 per year in income. Now, from their perspective, nothing changes. They've still got their £1 million invested, they're still having a regular income paid to their bank account, and they still have exactly the same lifestyle as they had before. But behind the scenes, two very powerful things are happening. First of all, the gift is known as a potentially exempt transfer. This means after 7 years, it will sit fully outside of their estate. Now, secondly, because they retain the right to that lifelong income, HMRC will say that they haven't really given away the full 1 million. An actuary will calculate the value of that income, and based on their age and medical underwriting, they will apply a discount. And that means there's an immediate reduction to their taxable estate on day one. Now, this isn't a magic solution, and there are a couple of drawbacks. So first of all, they are giving up access to the capital. They can't take out lump sums later if they want to. The investment will sit in an offshore bond, which isn't as tax efficient as an ISA, and any gains will be taxed under income tax rules. But compare that to leaving the money in the ISA and losing 40% of it to inheritance tax, things don't look so bad. Now, if you were being super optimal, then you would leave the money invested in the ISA until 7 years and 1 day before you knew you were going to die, and then you'd only have the trust in place for just over 7 years. But if only we were able to predict how our lives were going to play out with such certainty. Now let's look at their income. Between their pensions and savings interest, in total, they're bringing in about £100,000 per year. They spend around £72,000, which leaves £28,000 of genuine surplus income. So my next idea is to use part of that surplus income to fund a joint life, whole of life insurance policy, written in trust so that the proceeds are paid outside of their estate. And this will pay out on second death. The cover amount I've picked is £500,000, and the annual premium for that cover will be about £10,548. Now, because it's funded from this surplus income, it will qualify for the gift out of income exemption. So there's no inheritance tax on the premiums being paid. I always like to sanity check any life insurance against what the alternative would be. So what if these clients instead saved that annualized premium? Now, even if they achieved a guaranteed return of 4%, which isn't easy, it would take around 26 and a bit years to build up to more than £500,000. So if both clients pass away before the age of 97, the insurance will likely deliver a better outcome for their children than a savings account would have done. If they live longer than that, then the return, if you want to call it that, would gradually reduce. This isn't a perfect comparison, but I just like it as a useful benchmark. So now let's step back. The whole of life policy immediately pays £500,000 of inheritance tax, thereby removing £1,250,000 of the estate from inheritance tax. The discounted gift trust also creates an immediate reduction through the discount, and after 7 years, the full 1 million gift will sit fully outside of the estate. Now, in combination, this strategy could reduce their inheritance tax bill by around £900,000. But here's the key point: their day-to-day finances don't change at all. So I'm just parked up and ready to go in. Now, I know that on paper this plan works, so I'm comfortable with the numbers behind it, and to me it all makes perfect sense. Now, the issue is that I'm going in as the new advisor. These clients had their previous advisor for a long time, so I just need to be conscious that there's a lot more to this than me just going in with a new inheritance tax strategy. What I really need to get is their buy-in and their trust, so there's a lot more going on here. Now, there are parts of this plan that will feel uncomfortable for them, so they'll be losing access to some of their capital. They might be putting in place an insurance policy that they'll never personally benefit from. So my job is really just to go in, to explain everything, to explain the downsides, be honest, and let them decide what they're comfortable with. So I've just come out of the meeting, and that was quite a long one. There were a lot of questions, which is usually a good sign. Now, they like the strategy overall, but they didn't quite want to go as far as what I'd suggested. So they're going to put £750,000 into the discounted gift trust instead of £1 million. They're going to take a slightly higher percentage income from it as well, and that's just going to give them the flexibility to access more of their ISA money, so there'll be £250,000 left in those ISAs if they needed. Now, from a technical point of view, this is going to reduce the amount of inheritance tax that they save, but practically it's something that just makes sense for them. So they're still addressing their inheritance tax problem, but without feeling like they've overcommitted, I suppose. And that's a good outcome for me as a new advisor. Now, I mentioned earlier that one of the key parts of this plan was a discounted gift trust. Now, it's something I use a lot in inheritance tax planning, but there's far more to it than I could realistically cover in this video. Now, in this next video, I go into much more detail on how discounted gift trust actually works, the mechanic, just how they work behind the scenes, and when it might be appropriate to use one. Watch that one next.